Hey guys, welcome to Module 2, Lesson 4 in CPM 2. We are solving linear equations in one variable. So this is kind of the third lesson that we are solving for x, and they've progressively gotten harder. Now we are to, well, I'm not going to lie to you guys, not the hardest one, but the hardest one up until today. Okay. Objective 1, solve linear equations using addition and multiplication property. We've been doing this, right? If it says x plus 2, the opposite of plus 2 is to subtract 2, and what we do to one side, we are doing to the other. Likewise, multiplication. If it's 2 times x, the opposite is to divide, and if I divide the left side, we're dividing the right side. So keep these equations balanced, do the opposite operation. So I have re-put these in here for us. Same rules. If there's parentheses, use distributive property. Combine any like terms. Step 3, we need the variable on one side, the constant on the other side, and then we're going to divide both sides by whatever our numerical coefficient is. So, example 1, we're solving. Skipping this one, we don't have parentheses. Skipping this one, I can't combine to anything. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little OCD about these lines. Okay, that looks better. So I can't combine to anything. That has 3x has an x, negative 6 does not. A is A. 4 has no A. So, if you kind of notice, I kind of mixed up all my variables here. Sorry, guys. So, we're going to change that to an x. And then we'll change this one to an A. Now let's just change them both to X's. Okay, my bad. Okay, so I can't combine to anything. So we're to step 3. We need to get the variable on one side. So notice I have a variable over here and a variable over here. And I need to get the constant on one side as well. And I've got a constant over here and a constant over here. When you have a variable on both sides and a constant on both sides, it does not matter what you move, just move something. So we could move this 3x by subtracting 3x over. I can move that 6 by adding 6 over. I could move the x by subtracting it over. And I could move this 4 by subtracting it over. All of those are great things to do. Just pick one. Now, typically, we like our x or our variable over here, and then our constant over here. But that's not always the case. It's not always the easiest. It's not always the best thing to do. So what I'm going to do on this one is get my x over here. Okay, we're going to get that variable on one side. So the opposite of a positive x is a negative x. And what we do to one side of this equation, we have to do to the other. Keep it balanced. So 3x minus x is 2x. Remember, there's a 1 right here. That's a negative 1x. Bring down everything else. Minus 6 equals. X minus x cancels each other out. So I'm just left with a 4. So now I have that variable on one side. So because I have my variable over here, I need my number over here. This is where we started off last lesson. So to get my constant over here, I need to do the opposite of minus 6, which is plus 6. And I kind of skip saying it and talking about it, but hopefully we're there now. What I do to one side, we're doing to the other. So negative 6 plus 6 cancels out, that's 0. So I'm left with 2x equals 4 plus 6 is 10. And now we need to divide both sides. Now that I have my variable on one side, my constant on the other, divide both sides. The opposite of 2 times x is to divide it. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1x is the same as just x. And so we get x equals 5. Same thing on B. I have nothing to distribute and I can't combine like terms. We've got an x and no x and an x and no x. So we're starting right here again. Get the variable on one side, get your constant on the other side. So last time we moved x's first. Let's just move a number first. It does not matter. If we want to do variable over here and number over here, which for the most part I recommend, that means I need my 12 over here to this side here. So the opposite of plus 12 is to subtract 12. And what I do to one side of this equation, I've got to do to the other side of this equation. So 12 minus 12 is 0. Those cancel. So I'm left with 7x equals, I can bring down my 3x. We got negative 4 minus 12, so same signs. So you add and keep the sign, so negative 16. So now that I have my constant over here, we're done with this one. Now I need my variable over here then. So that means I need to move this over here. So the opposite of a positive 3x is a negative 3x. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So 7x minus 3x gives me 4x. Equals 3x minus 3x, cancels each other out, so I'm left with a negative 16. So now I have my variable on one side, my constant on the other, so now I need to divide both sides. The opposite of 4 times x is 4 divided by it. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so 1x is the same as x. And negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4. All right, these are just gonna kind of keep getting harder. I don't have my rules right here in front of me, but still use those same exact steps. So step 1 is distribute. I have nothing to distribute here, no parentheses. Step 2 is to combine like terms. So on this side of the equation, is there anything I can combine? Yeah, we can combine that 17 and that 3. So 17 plus 3 gives me 20. Bring down your minus 7x equals, look at this side. Is there anything on this side I can combine? Yes. We can combine a negative 3x and a negative 3x. So negative 3 minus 3, same sign, add and keep the sign. We get negative 6x. And then bring down your plus 21. So this is where we've got a number on both sides and a variable on both sides. Just move something. Up until this point, we have done variable over here, number over here. It does not matter though, so let's just go ahead and switch it on this one. So if I want my variable over here, the opposite of a minus 7x is to add 7x. And what I do to one side of this equation, I have to do to the other side. So if I'm going to add 7x to the left, we're adding 7x to the right. Negative 7 plus 7 cancels out, so I'm just left with 20. So we got 20 equals negative 6 plus 7. Different signs, so subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. So we can either go with a 1x, but 1x is the exact same thing as just x, plus 21. So now that I have my variable over here, that means I need my number over here. So the opposite of plus 21 is to subtract 21. And what I do to one side of this equation, I've got to do to the other. So if I'm subtracting 21 from one side, we've got to subtract 21 from the other side as well. So 20 minus 21, different signs. Subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. We get negative 1. So negative 1 equals x. Okay. So usually I don't like to do that just simply because I always like it to be x equals negative 1 instead. But it really does not matter what that order looks like. Okay. All right. Step 1, distributive property. We don't have anything to distribute, so look at both sides. Do I have anything to combine here? Yes, we do. We can combine a 40 and a 5. So 40 plus 5 gives me 45. Bring down your minus 5y equals, look at this side. Is there anything I can combine over here? Again, yes. We can combine a negative 2y and a negative 4y. So negative 2 minus 4 gives me negative 6y. Bring down your minus 10. So same thing, guys. We have a number on both sides and a variable on both sides. Just move something somewhere. So if we go back to variable on the left, constant on the right, that means I want to move either the 45 over here or the 6y over here. We're going to move both of them that direction, but in 2 steps. So let's go with the number this time. Opposite of a positive 45 is a negative 45, so we're going to subtract it over. Okay, and what I do to one side, I'm doing to the other side. 45 minus 45 is 0, so I'm left with negative 5y equals negative 6y. Negative 10 minus 45, same sign. Add and keep the sign. Negative 55. So now that I have my constant over here, I need my variable over here. So we need to move this over. So opposite of a negative 6y is a positive 6y. Negative 6 plus 6 cancel. Negative 5 plus 6 is 1y, or just y. And then that equals negative 55. All right, a couple more problems. And now these all have to do with parentheses. So now step 1 is actually going to apply. Now we are going to be distributing. So step 1, if parentheses are present, distribute. So that means we got 7 times x and 7 times negative 2. Bring everything else down. Step 3, combined each side if you have any like terms. I can't combine this side though. One has an x, one does not. And I can't combine this side because again, one has an x and one does not. So, same thing, move something. So if I want my variable over here, that means that my 9x needs to move over. So opposite of a positive 9x is a negative 9x. And what I do to one side, I am doing to the other. So 7 minus 9 gives me a negative 2x. Bring everything else down. So minus 14 equals a negative 6. So now that my variable's over here, I need my constant, my number over here. So I got to move this 14. So opposite of subtracting 14 is to add 14. So negative 14 plus 14 cancel each other out. So I'm left with negative 2x equals negative 6 plus 14 gives me a positive 8. And the last step is to divide. So I'm going to get x equals negative 4. B is the exact same thing. Step 1 is to distribute. So I need to do 6 times z and 6 times negative 5. Bring everything else down. Step 2, combined on each side. Can't combine this. One has a z, one doesn't. Can't combine this. Again, one has a z and one doesn't. So because you have a variable on both sides and a number on both sides, move something. Again, I like my variable over here. This is just my preference. Do whatever you want, people. But that means I need to move this over here. So the opposite of a positive 4z is a negative 4z. So 4 minus 4 cancel each other out. 6 minus 4 gives me a 2z. Bring everything else down. So now that my constant's over here, I need my number over here. So I need to move my negative 30 over. Well, opposite of subtracting 30 is to add 30. So I've got 2z equals 34. Divide by 2. And we get z equals, this is 17. If that's not one that you know, you can use your long division. We've got 2 and 34. 2 goes into 3 one time. Multiply it back. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1. Bring down your 4. 2 goes into 14 7 times. All right, now this last example, C and D. This is basically an example of this and this together. So far, we've kind of either distributed or combined like terms. Now we are going to need all of those steps in this problem. So, step 1, distribute. So we got 4 times x and 4 times 3. Bring down everything else. Step 2, combine your like terms. So look at each side. On this side here, is there anything we can combine? Yes, we can combine a 12 and a 1. 12 plus 1 gives me 13. So I got 4x plus 13 equals 13. So I already have my variable on one side, so that means I need my constant to the other side. So how do you move this 13 over here? Well, the opposite of adding 13 is to subtract it. So we get 4x equals 13 minus 13 is 0. Don't cancel that out because then you've got nothing left. we can cancel this side out because I still have a 4x over there. So instead of just canceling it, we're going to have to put a 0. Now, don't stop when you get 0. We can still keep solving. How do you get x by itself? Divide by 4. 0 divided by anything is 0. 0 is a number, okay? Just as real of a number as 17 and negative 4, 0 is good. And then lastly on D, I kind of wrote over it a little bit, but that isn't equals 0 there. So step 1, distribute. So we got 2 times 3k. No, 3 times 2k. Woo. And a 3 times a negative 6. So then plus 6 equals 0. Step 2, combine like terms on each side. Is there anything on this side we can combine? Yeah, we can combine these numbers here. So negative 18 plus 6 gives me negative 12 equals 0. Again, don't be freaked out by that 0. Stick to your rules. You want your your variable on one side, which we have, and your constant on the other. So, because my variables are already over here, let's get my constant over here. So, how do you move the 12 over? Opposite of subtracting 12 is to add it over. So we've got 6k equals 0 plus 12 is 12. Divide by your 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. All right, let's kind of switch gears on this last page. Now we're going to write numerical sentences as equations. This is really getting us set up for what we're going to do next lesson. The nice thing about these is you can check these all. So I didn't put the keywords again in for your you're adding, you're subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. But I did put your keywords in for equals. Up until this point, we've only done expressions, but now we have equations, which means we need an equal sign in there somewhere. So when you see equals, gives, is or was, yields, amounts to, or is equal to, that's where your equal sign goes. So the product of 7 and 6 is 42. Product means to multiply. So we need to multiply 7 and 6. That's my equal sign, and then 42. Is 7 times 6 42? Yes. So we know we did this one correctly. All right. Twice the sum of 3 and 5 is equal to 18 or 16. Okay. Twice means 2. Of means parentheses. So what happens after of is where your parentheses go. So we have in parentheses 3 and 5. What operation goes in between these two? The sum. Is equal to, so that's your equal sign, 16. Again, check it. Order of operations tells you to do parentheses first. So your parentheses 3 plus 5 is 8. And 2 times 8 is 16. So this one does work as well. The quotient is negative 45. I think it's supposed to be of. The quotient of negative 45 and 5 yields negative 9. Quotient means divide. So you can write this with your division symbol, we're going to see fractions more times than not. So we need to probably write this as negative 45 divided by 5 equals negative 9. Okay, and that's that yields. Yields means your equal sign. Check it. Is negative 45 divided by 5 negative 9? Yes, it is. Let's change this to a 70. The difference of 100 and 70 is 30. Is where your equal sign goes. Difference means subtract. So 100 minus 70 equals 30. Now that we've changed the numbers, is 100 minus 70 30? Yes, it is. The product of 3 and the sum of negative 9 and 11 amounts to 6. So here's that keyword again, of. So in parentheses is kind of just this 3 here. Instead of putting that 3 in parentheses though, what we will do is, basically you're wanting to multiply this with all of this. So the sum of negative 9 and 11, let's put that in parentheses instead. So you've got negative 9 plus 11. Then we have the product of 3 and all of that. So a lot of times when you have the product of a lot of things, that's when you have that 3 on the outside. Amounts to is your equal sign, and then 6. So again, this is one you can check. Parentheses first. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses. Negative 9 plus 11 is 2. And 3 times 2 gets you to that 6. And then our last example, the quotient of 24 and negative 6 yields 4. Negative 4. Yields, that's your equal sign. So quotient. We've got 24 over negative 6. That yields, that equals negative 4. Check it. Does 24 divided by negative 6 equal negative 4? Yes, it does. You guys let me know if you have any questions. Pause and rewind this video as you need to.